The Young and the Restless spoilers Mondays full November 24, 2025. The morning of Danny and Christine's long-awaited wedding dawned with a kind of quiet brilliance that Genoa City rarely experienced, a soft light that slipped through clouds like a blessing, warming the windows of the GCAC and spilling across the hallway leading to the bridal suite where Christine Blair was being prepared for a moment she had once believed would never come again. There was a strange mixture of disbelief and gratitude shimmering in her expression as she admired the gown hanging near the mirror, the delicate lace catching the light like the memory of a promise renewed after too many years apart. The air felt charged with nostalgia and destiny, as though the universe had decided that after everything, after heartbreak, misunderstandings, separations, and the long shadow that Phyllis had cast over their history, Christine finally deserved a day that belonged to her. Lauren Fenmore, who had been with her through so many storms, couldn't help but smile when she saw the way Christine's hands trembled slightly while touching the satin of her gown. "You're a beautiful bride," Lauren told her, the words soft and reverent, as if naming a truth that had been waiting to be spoken. Christine's voice broke with a mix of joy and disbelief as she responded, "I can't believe I'm getting married today." The words hovered in the air, shimmering between past and present, youth and maturity, hope and healing. Before she could say anything more, a sharp knock interrupted the delicate quiet. Christine turned, confused for a brief moment, before the door swung open and Nina rushed in with the kind of energy only a lifelong friend could carry into a room. The sheer joy on Christine's face was instantaneous, spreading across her features like sunlight as the two women threw their arms around each other in an embrace filled with memories, shared laughter, shared pain, shared survival. Nina, beaming, held out a carefully decorated box. "From Lauren and me," she announced, opening it to reveal personal tokens chosen with intention and meaning, something blue, something borrowed, something old. Small artifacts of history and love designed to carry blessings into Christine's future. Christine's eyes shone with emotion as she lifted each piece, the weight of nostalgia grounding her in the certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. But the moment fractured again when another knock rattled the door. This time, it was a hotel staff member holding a tall arrangement of flowers. Bright, bold, and dramatically mismatched from the soft romantic palette Christine had chosen for her day. She frowned instantly. "There's no card?" she asked, confused. "No ma'am," the staffer replied. "They were just delivered." Christine leaned forward to examine the bouquet, and her reaction was immediate. Her eyes watered, her nose twitched, her skin prickled. "Chrysanthemums," she gasped, stepping back as she fought off an involuntary sneeze. "I'm allergic." Lauren and Nina exchanged glances, sharp, knowing, almost resigned. "Who do we know?" Lauren muttered under her breath, "who would send flowers without a card, at the exact wrong moment, in the wrong style, and with no regard for your allergy?" There was only one name. One shadow. One woman who refused to let Christine breathe freely even for a single day. "Phyllis," Christine whispered, frustration striking her tone like a crack in porcelain. "Of course it's Phyllis." Lauren rolled her eyes with the kind of exasperation that came only from years of dealing with the same tornado of chaos. Nina folded her arms, muttering something unforgiving under her breath, and for a brief moment the air filled with tension that tried to creep into Christine's joy. She refused to let it. "She isn't ruining this," Christine said firmly. "Not today." But even as she turned away, the scent of chrysanthemums still lingering in the room like a taunt, the truth remained. Phyllis Summers was already inserting herself into the day, pushing at boundaries she refused to acknowledge, testing the fragile peace Christine was trying to preserve. Meanwhile, downstairs at GCAC, Danny Romalotti sat with his son Daniel, trying to ground himself in the calm pride of a man who had fought his way back to happiness. Daniel raised his glass slightly, offering a bittersweet comment about Lucy being too sick to attend. "It's a shame she can't be here," he said, disappointment softening his voice. "She wanted to see you get married." Danny nodded. "Me too. But she'll be here in spirit." There was a rare, quiet warmth between father and son, one that had taken years to rebuild after so many mistakes, resentments, and misunderstandings. Danny seemed to relax for the first time that morning, until an all-too-familiar voice sliced into the moment like a blade wrapped in silk. "Maybe," Phyllis announced as she approached their table with her trademark smirk, "Lucy's just allergic to her future bug of a stepmother." Daniel's face fell instantly. Danny closed his eyes as though praying for patience from forces he no longer believed listened to him. The bubble of peace around them shattered, replaced by the chaotic swirl that always accompanied Phyllis wherever she went. Danny lifted his head, exhaustion and disappointment plain in his eyes. "Phyllis," he said, trying to keep his tone steady but firm, "just give me one day. One day without this." Phyllis arched a brow, pretending innocence though everyone knew better. "Without what?" "I'm just making conversation." But Daniel wasn't fooled. He stood up, stepping between her and his father, his expression sharp with protective frustration. "Mom," he said, voice low but intense, "you can't do this today. You cannot ruin this for him." For a flicker of a moment, something like hurt crossed Phyllis's face, but just as quickly it hardened into defiance. "I just came to say hello," she insisted. "To wish him well," Daniel cut her off. "Go upstairs. Now. And this is the last time I want to see you today." The words struck her harder than she expected. Her chin quivered almost imperceptibly before she masked it with indignation. She turned sharply and stormed toward the stairs, convinced she was the misunderstood victim yet again in a world that refused to see her side of things. Danny exhaled slowly, deeply, letting the relief settle into his shoulders like a weight removed. He looked at Daniel with gratitude, though the ache of what Phyllis had become lingered heavily in his heart. Upstairs, Christine was adjusting the veil Lauren had fastened when another knock sounded. Louder this time, urgent in a way that made her turn toward the door instinctively. "If this is chrysanthemums again," Lauren muttered, marching toward the door, "I swear," but it wasn't more flowers. And it wasn't a hotel staff member. Standing in the doorway was Gina Romalotti, her expression composed but her eyes burning with a kind of fierce clarity reserved only for family matters and truths that had been held back for far too long. Christine straightened, surprised and slightly confused, while Nina and Lauren stepped aside instinctively. Gina approached with a calm purpose that seemed to thicken the room's atmosphere. "Christine," she began gently, "could I have a moment alone with you?" The other women looked unsure, but Christine nodded. When the door closed behind them, Gina inhaled deeply, gathering her thoughts before speaking with the directness she had been holding on to for years. "I came here because I need you to know something," she said. "Not for Danny's sake. Not for the past. But because today is your day, and you deserve the truth without shadows hanging over you." Christine's pulse quickened. Gina took a step closer. "I love my brother," she said firmly. "I've seen him hurt, confused, manipulated, and torn apart. But I've also seen him happiest with you, truly, genuinely happy in a way he never was with Phyllis." Christine felt her breath catch. Gina continued, her tone sharpening with conviction. "And you need to know that Phyllis has been trying, again, to sabotage this wedding. She's already caused chaos downstairs. She's not going to stop unless someone tells her the truth she refuses to accept." Christine swallowed. "And what truth is that?" Gina's eyes hardened. "That Danny does not love her. That he has not loved her for a long time. That she needs to let him go. And if she can't, then she needs to stay out of this day completely." The words settled between them like a protective shield, firm, unyielding, necessary. Christine felt the weight of them, not as a warning but as an affirmation she hadn't realized she needed. She nodded slowly, gratitude building in her chest. "Thank you," she whispered. "For saying it." Gina placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You deserve peace today. I just came to help make sure you get it." Downstairs, while Christine absorbed Gina's words and Phyllis's absence simmered like a bruise beneath the surface, Danny tried to steady himself for the ceremony ahead, but deep in his heart he knew this day would test everyone more than they expected. And Christine, adjusting her veil again, trying to calm her breathing, had no idea that the chrysanthemums were only the beginning, that Phyllis, wounded and spiraling, was already plotting her next move just one floor above. The moment Gina Romalotti stepped into the softly lit lobby of the GCAC, the atmosphere shifted in a way that only the presence of an older sister could alter, steady, grounding, infused with the kind of emotional authority that comes from a lifetime of navigating complicated family storms. Danny had just finished speaking with Daniel, still shaken by the earlier encounter with Phyllis, when he looked up and saw Gina walking toward him, her expression warm and filled with the kind of pride reserved only for family who had witnessed the messy journey that led to this day. Without hesitation, she opened her arms, and Danny stepped forward, allowing himself to be enveloped in an embrace that seemed to absorb the residue of tension clinging to him. She held him tightly for a moment, long enough to remind him that regardless of chaos swirling around, weddings, exes, allergies, secrets, he was surrounded by people who genuinely wanted his happiness. When they pulled apart, Gina cupped his face gently, and Danny saw tears shimmering in her eyes. "You deserve this," she whispered. "Every single part of it." Her words were simple, but they landed like a blessing. Almost immediately afterward, the lobby began to fill with familiar faces, each arrival adding another thread of warmth to a day that desperately needed anchors amid the turbulence Phyllis kept threatening to unleash. Tessa was the first to appear, embracing Christine earlier upstairs but now joining the gathering downstairs with her soft voice and gentle energy that always soothed the sharp edges of stressful moments. Then came Amy, pausing briefly in the doorway before stepping toward the group with a quiet smile that couldn't hide the emotional weight she'd been carrying for years. Nate Hastings arrived next, calm, polished, offering Danny a handshake filled with sincerity and support. Tracy Abbott followed soon after, glowing with her signature kindness that made every space feel safer. Esther Valentine greeted Danny with heartfelt enthusiasm, and even Diane Jenkins, still navigating her own complicated return to Genoa City, approached with grace, offering warm congratulations that felt genuine despite the ghosts that followed her everywhere. It should have been a peaceful moment, friends and family gathering in celebration, surrounding the groom with support and renewed hope. But tranquility never lasted long in a place where Phyllis Summers was present. And, of course, she was. Down the stairs she came, once again, her presence slicing through the room like a chill wind. It wasn't even that she was being dramatic this time, it was simply that she existed. And her existence had become synonymous with disruption, tension, and the uneasy tightness that threaded itself through the air whenever she stepped into a room with Christine's name attached to it. Gina turned the moment she saw her. All earlier softness vanished, replaced by the fierce protectiveness of a sister who had watched Danny be torn apart more times than she could count by the same woman walking toward them now with false innocence painted over layers of resentment and delusion. Gina took a step forward, planting herself directly in Phyllis's path, her expression sharp and unwavering. "I'm not letting you spread your filth around here," she said in a voice so cold it briefly froze every conversation in the room. "So whatever you think you're going to do, whatever drama you came here to ignite, I swear," but before Gina could finish, Lauren descended the last steps behind Phyllis, moving quickly and decisively as she reached out, grabbed Phyllis's arm, and pulled her aside with a controlled urgency that spoke louder than any shouted warning. Lauren leaned in, her tone stern, her gaze penetrating. "Enough," she whispered fiercely. "Don't you dare turn today into a spectacle. Don't you drag your problems into a wedding that doesn't belong to you. And don't you dare use old wounds, old rivalries, or those chrysanthemums to stir chaos." Phyllis's eyes widened. Then she laughed, light, airy, dismissive. "Oh, come on," she giggled. "You think I sent those flowers?" "Lauren, please." Lauren's glare sharpened. "Don't insult me with denial. You've pulled stunts like that before. You live for them." But Phyllis continued to shake her head, the laugh lingering though her eyes carried something darker, deflection, confusion, maybe even guilt she refused to acknowledge. Whether she sent the flowers or not almost didn't matter. Her reputation had already shaped the assumption, and she had no one to blame but herself. But Lauren, knowing confrontation alone wouldn't keep Phyllis under control, lowered her voice further. "Don't make me bring up the mothers," she said pointedly, invoking memories of incidents and grudges that even Phyllis didn't want resurrected in public. That silenced Phyllis for a moment, wiping the smirk from her face, if only temporarily. Yet the peace lasted barely seconds before another presence entered the scene, Kane. His appearance was like a sudden temperature drop. Conversations faltered. People stiffened. But he approached Danny with a carefully neutral expression, extending his hand with genuine sincerity. "Congratulations," he said quietly. "I mean it." Danny nodded, accepting the gesture despite the complicated history. But Kane hadn't even fully stepped back before Amy's eyes narrowed, recognizing him instantly. Her breath hitched, not from surprise, but from the boiling sting of an old wound tearing open. She stepped forward, her expression tightening with resolve born of years of suppressed pain. "I wasn't going to do this," Amy said, her voice trembling but firm. "Not today. Not here. Not at the wedding of one of my closest friends." The room quieted around them. Kane froze. "But you're here," Amy continued, stepping closer, her eyes locking onto his. "And this moment has been long overdue." Kane swallowed, his throat visibly constricting. Before he could respond, another figure approached, Nina. Her presence hit like a second wave of reckoning, her expression even harsher, her eyes filled with a grief that time had never softened. She stood beside Amy, shoulders squared, voice low but razor-sharp. "I agree," Nina said. "We've waited long enough for this conversation." Kane exhaled shakily. "I know you're angry," he began, his voice breaking slightly. "Both of you have every right to be. I can't undo anything. I can't make the past disappear. But I can tell you the truth, the men we lost, those men you loved, they were good, kind, honorable. And his voice cracked. "I will always regret the part one played in their deaths." The rawness of his confession seeped into the space between them, but neither woman softened. Nina's voice quivered with rage she had carried like a stone in her chest. "I'm angry," she said. "Kane, anger doesn't even begin to cover it. What you did, what you helped set into motion, destroyed lives. It destroyed futures. It carved a hole so deep inside me that nothing will ever fill it." Amy's voice rose next, steady but drenched in sorrow. "Our grief never ends, Kane. It never fades. We don't wake up one day healed. We don't move on. We survive. We function. But we're never whole again. Because of what happened. Because of what you were part of." The silence that followed was suffocating, thick with anguish, regret, and all the words that none of them had been able to say until this very moment. Kane nodded slowly, accepting every syllable like a blow he believed he deserved. And as the room watched, eyes wide, breaths held, one truth became painfully clear: this wedding wasn't just a celebration, it was a collision point for years of unresolved tragedies, confrontations, and ghosts that refused to rest. And the most dangerous ghost of all was still standing upstairs, deciding her next move. Kane stood there with the weight of decades bearing down on him, the grief of two families pressing so heavily against his ribs that he almost couldn't breathe. His eyes flickered between Amy and Nina as though he were standing in judgment before two saints who had survived hellfire, and his voice, though quiet, carried raw sincerity that made even the distant conversations around them fade into silence. "I promise you both," he said, his throat tightening, "I will never forget Chance Chancellor and Damian Kane. I will never forget what happened. I will never forget what you lost. I will never stop regretting my role in any of it." Nina's jaw clenched, fury and heartbreak mixing in her expression like poison she'd learned to swallow every day. Amy's eyes glossed with restrained tears she refused to let fall in front of him. Before either woman could respond, a familiar flash of red hair cut through the air like a warning flare. Phyllis. She stepped toward Kane with a casualness so chilling it froze the moment in place, her hand lightly brushing his arm as though she were collecting him like an item she owned. "Are you ready?" she asked him, her tone businesslike, impatient, oblivious, or unconcerned about the emotional storm she had just walked into. Gina, overhearing, shot a glance toward Danny and muttered under her breath with razor-sharp disdain, "Looks like Phyllis has found her next victim already." Danny exhaled heavily, but there was nothing he could do as Kane left with Phyllis, two troubled souls walking side by side, one drowning in guilt, the other feeding on chaos, leaving the wedding atmosphere buzzing with foreboding tension. Meanwhile, Lauren, Nina, and Gina made their way upstairs to check on Christine, Cricket, who was still recovering from the earlier flower incident. The energy between the three women carried both protectiveness and determination. They were not going to let any more disruptions reach the bride. As they reached the suite, Abby Newman stepped into the hallway from the opposite elevator and nearly collided with Amy, who was still shaken from her exchange with Kane. Abby, recognizing the weight of Amy's expression instantly, approached gently. "I'm proud of you," Abby told her, her voice soft and steady. "So proud of you and Nina. Mom would be proud too." Amy swallowed hard, touched by the sentiment, and nodded. "Kane and Carter will never drain me again," she said quietly but with newfound strength. "Never." Abby placed a comforting hand on her arm before Amy slipped back into the crowd, leaving Abby to follow the others upstairs. In the bridal suite, Christine was trying to regain her composure when yet another knock sounded at the door. The three women froze. Lauren let out a soft groan of disbelief as she muttered, "If this is another bouquet of chrysanthemums, I'm calling security." But when the door opened, the staff member didn't present allergy-triggering flowers. Instead, he held a soft, elegant arrangement of white roses, lavender sprigs, and blue delphiniums, the exact palette Christine loved. And attached to the bouquet, unlike the earlier one, was a card. Christine felt her breath catch as she opened it. Her eyes softened instantly. "These are from Paul," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "Wishing us a lifetime of happiness." Her hand brushed the card with a nostalgic affection that pulled at the heartstrings of everyone present. Lauren blinked several times, fighting a complicated mix of relief and awkwardness. "Oh. Well, yes. Of course they're from Paul." Christine smiled wistfully, reading the words again as though they were a final blessing from a love that had shaped an era of her life. Lauren cleared her throat and lifted Christine's wedding gown from the nearby chair. "And forever begins right now," she added warmly, holding the gown up like a banner of hope. The women gathered around Christine, helping her step into the beautiful dress. Ivory silk with a sweetheart neckline that highlighted her elegance, strength, and the resilience that had led her back to this moment. Emotion shimmered in the room as they zipped the dress, adjusted the veil, smoothed the fabric. Upstairs, joy was reclaiming its place. Downstairs, the wedding guests were finally being escorted to their seats. Christine, glowing with a mature beauty born from fight and forgiveness, took one last deep breath before stepping toward the elevator. The lobby of the GCAC had transformed into an elegant wedding setting, guests seated in warm lighting, chatter fading into excited whispers. Danny stood at the front beside Michael Baldwin, who was officiating the ceremony with a mixture of solemnity, pride, and entertainment value unique to Michael's personality. Danny's hands shook slightly, just enough for Michael to notice. "You're doing great," Michael whispered, leaning over without breaking his poised posture. "You're about to marry your soulmate. That's a rare privilege in this town." Danny offered a nervous smile, but his eyes drifted toward the elevator, waiting for that one breathtaking moment he had been imagining for years. When the music shifted, the room held its breath. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, and Christine stepped out, radiant, ethereal, confident. Her dress flowed like poetry, her smile glowing with a joy so pure it silenced every lingering ghost from the past. The guests rose. A collective gasp filled the air. Nina shook her head in amused disbelief when she heard Esther whispering loudly to Diane, "I'm so pleased. I picked the perfect colors for the bouquet I sent Christine, along with the mother's flowers." Diane raised a brow politely, while Nina mouthed, "Not now, Esther." But even Esther's commentary couldn't disrupt the magic of the moment. Christine walked slowly down the aisle toward Danny, every step a reclamation of her history, her strength, her right to happiness. Danny's eyes softened, glistened, and then filled with a love so open and vulnerable that Christine's own breath caught. When she reached him, they exchanged a small, intimate smile meant only for each other. Michael began the ceremony with a voice that resonated through the room, calm, powerful, heartfelt. He spoke of destiny, of love that survived storms, of mistakes and forgiveness, of second chances that came not from desperation but from deep understanding. And then, it was time for the vows. Christine went first, her voice strong despite the emotion building behind it. She spoke of loyalty, friendship, growth, and a love that had evolved into something deeper than youth, something anchored in experience and truth. Danny followed, his vow reflecting reflection, gratitude, and the unwavering promise that he would never again take for granted the woman standing before him. The room was silent except for the soft sniffles of guests trying, and failing, to hold back tears. When Michael finally declared, with a dramatic flourish only he could deliver, "I now pronounce you a couple destined until the end of days," there was a shared exhale of joy across the entire room. Danny pulled Christine into a kiss. Tender, grateful, overflowing with years of ache dissolving in one perfect moment. The guests erupted in applause. Joy radiated through the room like a wave of warmth. And for the first time, perhaps in decades, Danny and Christine felt completely, beautifully, undeniably home.